Sup peeps? Today we're going to learn how to solve quadratics by factoring. Yes, I told you it was going to come back, didn't I? Alright, so first thing we're going to look at, okay, what does it mean to solve a quadratic? Well, when we're solving a quadratic, we are finding our, guess what? Your arrows are pointing to your x-intercepts. Right? So where the graph is crossing or touching the x-axis. Now we've got more words for x-intercepts. We also call those roots, or we call them zeros, or we call them soluciones. Those all mean, again, where the quadratic touches the x-axis. And it says your x-intercepts are when your y value is equal to 0. Because again, the only way for me to lie on the x-axis is for me to have a y value of 0. Okay, so today we're going to look at how to find these x-intercepts without a graph. So looking at my number of solutions, we have three possible cases. Okay, we have no solutions, 0, no solutions. We have one solution where the graph touches the x-axis one time, and two solutions where the graph touches the x-axis two times. Right? So if I'm looking at a graph that has no solutions, it would look something like this. Right? Because that parabola does not touch the x-axis. Therefore, there is no x-intercepts. If it has one solution, it would lie on the x-axis. So what that would look like is something like this. Right? Because it's touching the x-axis one time. So I have my solution, but it only touches it once. So there's only one of those. And then we have also two solutions, which you've already been looking at. If it crosses the x-axis two times, then you have that many solutions. We have in math what we call the zero product property. And all that means is if x times y is equal to 0, then x or y has to equal 0. Or they can both equal 0. So again, if x times y equals 0, one of those two numbers has to equal 0, because anything times 0 equals 0. Or they can both equal 0, because 0 times 0 is still 0. Right? So if 3x equals 0, then x has to equal 0. Right? If you're solving for x, you're going to divide by 3 on both sides. Well, 0 divided by 3 is still 0, so x equals 0. If 2x times x minus 4 equals 0, then 2x must equal 0, or, and, could be either one, x minus 4 must equal 0. So either that's got to equal 0, or this piece has to equal 0, or they can both equal 0. Because again, anything times 0 is 0. Alright, now, I know, weird, but let's look at what that means. So I'm going to use this zero product, and put that in air quotes. I'm going to use the zero product property to solve my quadratics. So all we're doing is we're going to take this puppy and set it equal to 0. X plus 4 equals 0. We're going to take this kitty cat and set it equal to 0. Because again, one of those two has to equal 0. So x plus 4 equals 0. Well, the way for me to solve is to subtract 4 on both sides, and I get x equals negative 4. Okay, I've also got x plus 5 equals 0, so I'm going to subtract 5 on both sides to get x by itself, and I get x equals negative 5. So my points, or my roots, or my solutions, or my zeros, are when x equals negative 4 and when x equals negative 5. Now, again, what we're talking about is the x-intercept. So if it's the x-intercept, it means it has to have a y value of 0. So x equals both negative 4 and negative 5. I'm going to do the same thing here on number 2. So I've got x minus 3, that panda bear, that's equal to 0. I'm also going to set x plus 7 equal to 0. So that koala equals 0. Solve. So add 3, get x by itself. X equals 3. or x equals negative 7. So I have two solutions, right? So the graph is going to touch the x-axis at both of these points. The graph is going to touch the x-axis at both of these points. Negative 7, 0, and 3, 0. Oh, sorry. Last one, I've got these two. Same thing. Just because there's a number in front of the x, don't freak out. Set it equal to 0. Alright? So 3x minus 2 equals 0. Same thing. 2x plus 5 equals 0. Solve for x. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. That goes away. You've got 3x equals 2. Last step, divide by 3. So x equals 2/3. Same thing here. Subtract 5 on both sides. That goes away. So 2x equals negative 5. Divide by 2. X equals negative 3/2. Sorry, negative 5/2. What the heck are you doing, Coach Sapp? So my 2 points are negative 5/2, 0, and 2/3, 0. So x equals Alright, so let's look at our quadratic, right? I need to get it in this form. Well, how do I do that? What you're going to do is you're going to take your quadratic and you're going to factor it. We've already talked about how to factor quadratics. Once we have it in this form, then we're going to use the zero product property to solve. That means that each factor, okay, which is what this is, and what this is, and what this is, and what this is, so set each factor equal to 0, and solve that puppy. So I'm looking at number 4. Now I give you a hint, we're going to factor out the GCF. Because if I look at number 4, I've got an x in both of these terms. Now the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure and set this equation equal to 0. Right now it's not set equal to 0. You have a variable on both sides. So what you need to do is you need to subtract this 5x to this side to get the equation equal to 0. Because once again, we're doing the zero product property. So we need my equation to equal 0. So I'm going to move this 5x to that side. So it goes away. I canceled it out to this side. I moved it. So I've got x squared minus 5x equals 0. There's nothing left over here. 5x minus 5x is 0. Now, again, like I said, give you a hint, we're factoring out the GCF. If you notice, you've got an x in both of those. So I can factor out a GCF of x to the first power. When I say factor out, I'm telling you divide, right? So x squared divided by x, I'm left with an x to the first power. Minus 5x divided by x, those cancel out, I'm left with 5. Equals 0. Now once again, what we just learned is I'm going to set this equal to 0, and I'm going to set this equal to 0. So here we go. I've got x equals 0, but I've also got x minus 5 equals 0. Well, this is already solved, x equals 0. So you know you have a point at 0, 0. Right? Because the y value's got to equal 0. Because what we're doing right now is we're finding the x-intercepts. Right? And again, the x-intercepts always have a y value of 0. Always, always, always. That's the definition of x-intercepts. Now, let's solve this one and let's figure out what their other root is, or solution, or 0, or x-intercept. So the other one is at 5, 0. Now, you want to check me? Put it in your calculator. You're going to get these 2 points. Those are where it touches the x-axis. All right, let's look at another example. So looking at number 5. Okay, I've got x squared minus 7x plus 12. So once again, we're going to figure out what is a, what is b, and what is c. This is a trinomial, right? In standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. Once again, a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, and then c is the number at the end. So in this case, a is a 1, b is a negative 7, and c is a positive 12. Now, why is that important? Because once again, we're looking for factors of a times c, which in this case is 1 times 12, which is 12. But those factors need to add to give me negative 7. So let's look at our factor chart of a times c, which is 12, but then adding, or I say subtract, because I know I have to have different signs. Excuse me, I have to have the same sign. Okay. Alright, sorry. I have to have the same sign to get negative 7. So I'm looking for factors of 12 that add to give me 7. Some factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. 1 plus 12 is 13. I want 7. That's not right. 2 and 6 is 8. I want 7. That's not right. 3 and 4 is 7. Perfect. I want a negative 7, so those are both negative. So I've got a negative 3 and I've got a negative 4. So those are my two factors. I've got x minus 3 and I've got x minus 4. So I just factored this. Now, once again, this is equal to 0. The zero product property tells me that x minus 3 equals 0, but also x minus 4 equals 0. We're going to take both of our factors and set them equal to 0. So I'm going to solve for x. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And I get x equals positive 3 and x equals positive 4. So your points, your roots, your solutions, your x-intercepts are at 3, 0 and at 4, 0. Alright, moving on to number 6. Number 6, I have a 2 for my a value. I have a negative 3 for my b value. And then my c is going to be negative 5. Now, how did I get that? Once again, I need to get this equal to 0. So you need to move that. So I'm going to subtract by 5 on both sides to move it to this side. So my quadratic is 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals 0. Now, once again, we're looking for factors of a times c. So we're making our asterisk. So factors of a times c, so factors of negative 10, that add or subtract to give me negative 3. And I'm saying subtract because two numbers that multiply to give me a negative have to have different signs. Now, once again, a goes in the top, and we're looking for factors in the bottom. So again, a times c, or negative 10, that add to give me negative 3. So some factors of negative 10 are 1 and 10, 1 and negative 10, 2 and negative 5, negative 2 and positive 5. That's it. So this gives me a positive 9. That's not what I want. This gives me a negative 9. That's not what I want. This gives me a negative 3. Ding, 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 ding. And this gives me a positive 3. So again, my factors are 2 and negative 5. And once again, we're looking to reduce these factors, or sorry, fractions if we can. You can reduce that to 1 over 1. That cannot be reduced. So my two factors are 1x, that's a positive, so plus 1, and then 2x, that's a negative, so minus 5. Now, once again, we're setting these equal to 0. So x plus 1 equals 0, and then 2x minus 5 equals 0. So solve for x. So 2x equals 5. Last step would be to divide by 2. X equals positive 5/2. So once again, your two solutions, or your roots, or your x-intercepts, would be the point negative 1, 0, and 5/2, 0. You don't believe me? Plug that into your calculator and tell me where my two x-intercepts are. Last one, we're looking at the difference of squares. Okay, once again, we want this equal to 0, so subtract 25 on both sides. Get that rid of that. Okay, over here you got 4x squared minus 25. That equals 0. So now we're looking for factors. So I want two numbers that multiply to give me 4. Well, it's got to be 2 and 2. And then x and x multiplied together give me x squared. Again, these are perfect squares, right? So two numbers, the same number, multiplied by itself to give me 25. Well, it's got to be 5 and 5. One has to be positive, one has to be negative, because my b term, my middle term, canceled out. So I know I have to have different signs. I also know that I need to multiply to get a negative 25. So one's got to be positive, one's got to be negative. Once again, that's equal to 0, right? So we're going to set both of these factors equal to 0. 2x plus 5 equals 0. And then 2x minus 5 equals 0. Subtract 5 on both sides. 2x equals negative 5. Add 5 on both sides. 2x equals positive 5. So then last step, divide by the 2 on both sides. So x equals negative 5 halves, and x equals positive 5 halves. So again, all we're learning today is you're going to take your factors, you're going to factor it out, right? Factor the trinomial, we know how to do that. And you're going to set my factors equal to 0, and you're going to solve for x. I ain't no thing but a chicken wing.